The time is now for Week 1 NFL Football, Dr. Bob Sports Podcast. I am Tanner. I am our head of analytics, and for the past 6 years, I've been working alongside Bob, originating our NFL and college basketball bets. And today, as always, I'm joined by our digital media specialist, Grant. How we doing?
Doing great, Tan. I am either very happy right now or distraught that the Chiefs just lost last night. But it's Week 1 NFL. I'm super excited to get this thing going.
Yeah, we're recording now on Thursday afternoon, so we don't know what happened with Chiefs-Lions last night, but we're going to get to all the other Week 1 games starting now, and we've got different segments that we're going to roll out as we move the podcast from 2 episodes per week to 1 episode per week. Each Friday, we're going to send out an episode with segments that should touch on most of, if not all, the games.
Yeah, so let's just jump right into the injuries. So we've already touched on the Von Miller, Jared Jeudy, and Jamal Adams injuries, but is there anything else that looks significant?
Well, it seems like the entire Panthers receiving core is banged up. Terrace Marshall, DJ Shark, and Adam Thielen are all limited or not practicing. And also, Carolina will be without starting guard Austin Corbett, and that is not good against the Falcons as they bring in interior defenders David Onyemata and Calais Campbell to play alongside Grady Jarrett. Those three combined for 114 pressures up the middle last season, so not having a starting guard in this matchup, certainly not good for the Panthers offense.
Yeah, what's the deal with Denzel Ward's concussion?
So as we record this, he's still in protocol, but he was practicing. So I kind of expect him to clear concussion protocol, but if he doesn't, that would be a major downgrade for the Browns. Without Ward, that means the Browns would have to put Mike Ford on the field to guard one of Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, or Tyler Boyd, and that's not good to have a weak link like that against the Bengals. Ford has gotten less than 100 snaps in the last 2 seasons, and we have Ward worth 0.8 points above Ford.
Yeah, that's a bad matchup. But what about this Texans offensive line? I mean, they are just putting everyone on IR, it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, they lost last year's first-round pick, Kenyon Green, and this year's second-round pick, Juice Scruggs. And now, starting right tackle, Titus Howard is on the IR. Now, the Ravens don't necessarily have the most threatening defensive line. They only rank 23rd in our metrics. And then in week 2 and week 3, the Texans have the Colts and the Jaguars. So their disaster on the offensive line might not be fully exploited until week 4 versus Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that poor team. Feels like whenever they're down, they just keep getting kicked. But what's the deal with Cam Robinson here?
So, I mean, the Jaguars lose both starting tackles, at least to start the season. Jawan Taylor and Cam Robinson both ranked above average in PFF pass blocking grade last season. Jawan Taylor moved on to the Chiefs in the offseason, and Cam Robinson has been suspended for the first 4 games by the NFL for violating the league's performance-enhancing drug policy. So this leaves the Jaguars for the first month of the year starting late first-round rookie Anton Harrison and Walker Little at tackle, who surrendered a 10% pressure rate last year. And for reference, Taylor and Robinson averaged conceding just a 3.7% pressure rate in 2022. So it could be tough for Trevor Lawrence in collapsing pockets, at least for the first month of the year.
Yeah, bad news for Trevor, and also potential bad news for Tua. His left tackle is looking like he might be hurt here. What are your thoughts on Armstead?
Yeah, so Armstead allowed just 1 sack in 13 games last year, but he might not be available for week 1. That seems like it'll be a true game time decision, and Armstead is worth nearly a full point by our metrics. I mean, Austin Jackson and backup Kendall Lamb versus Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa might be the biggest mismatch on any offensive-defensive line we see in week 1, so the Dolphins will be desperate to have Armstead out there. Otherwise, I think Mike McDaniel might just have to exclusively call RPOs just to limit this Chargers pass rush. I mean, it really would limit the Dolphins offensively.
Yeah, when I was looking at Armstead's injury report, it said back, knee, ankle. I think it was the whole body. It was shoulder, head, knees, toes. Like, it was the whole thing. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if
it's
I've ever
been
seen
like that for him throughout his career. I mean, he has missed games in almost every season he's been in the NFL, but when he's out there, he is one of the best left tackles in the league.
Yes, he is. But all right, let's move on to our next segment. This is called Public Opinion Time with Grant. So let's just go down the slate here. I'm going to tell you what the public brain says. So The first thing is people don't realize that the Falcons actually got a lot better this year, but they are ready for the Bijan to have 4 touchdowns and be a fantasy star week 1.
Yeah, it does seem like everyone's pumped for Bijan Robinson out of the gates, but I actually disagree with him getting off to that hot start because I actually love this Panthers' new defense. New coordinator Ejiro Evero ranked number 1 in our defensive play calling metrics last year as Denver's defensive coordinator, which was a major surprise to me because I thought they would definitely downgrade at coordinator after they lost Vic Fangio. And Evero basically combined creative pressure packages with disguised coverage looks. And I would say that the talent of this year's Panthers defense is equal to or better than what Evero had with the Broncos. He basically evolved Fangio's defense into a better scheme, in my opinion. And so I assume he'll be taking that to his next stop in Carolina. And you look at the talent, I mean, they've got edge defender Brian Burns, who had 67 pressures, which ranked 10th. Interior defender Derek Brown, graded as PFF's 7th best in defensive tackle. And the linebackers, Shaq Thompson and Frankie Louvu, both finished top 10 in run stops. So I don't think there's any way the Falcons will be able to maintain a ground game nearly 5 points above league average like they had last season, according to our metrics, which is not good news for Bijan Robinson. Even if he is better than Tyler Algier and Cordell from a talent standpoint, now defenses have had all offseason to diagnose Arthur Smith's run schemes. And I really don't think that Bijan is going to get off to a hot start, even if he is worth, whatever that he was getting drafted in fantasy leagues, a top 10 pick. And maybe throughout the full season, he'll deliver on that ADP. But week 1, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I don't really think I've heard anyone talk about this Panthers team this offseason. So they might just be not a sleeping giant, but a team everyone's sleeping on here because I wouldn't be surprised to see their new quarterback be a good game manager like he was at Alabama.
Yeah, and I mean, someone's got to win that NFC South. So it's going to be probably a below average team. So it could be the Panthers. Our Sims don't project the Panthers as the most likely to win the NFC South. We have Atlanta and New Orleans as the clear favorites. But if Bryce Young hits, I mean, like I said, I love this defense. So it could be the Panthers. That wouldn't shock me for sure.
All right, well, let's move on to the next one. So public opinion here is Cardinals are extremely trash and not very many are ready to see this Commanders team be sneaky good.
Yeah, and this time I'm going to agree with Public Brain. I do think the Cardinals are trash. I mean, they only have 2 players on this roster clearly above replacement level in Budda Baker, their safety, and wide receiver Hollywood Brown. Now, you could make a case that their other safety, Jalen Thompson, and left tackle DJ Humphries are also above replacement level, but it gets really bleak after those 4 guys. Arizona's interior defensive line lost 90 pressures after J.J. Watt retired, and Zach Allen followed former defensive coordinator Vance Joseph to Denver. And then the retirement of Rodney Hudson means the Cardinals are going with Froholt at center, who surrendered 7 sacks and only 6 starts for the Browns last year. So in all this, before we mention who's going to start under center for Arizona now, Jonathan Gannon is playing coy in the media, but I think we all assume it's going to be Josh Dobbs over 5th round rookie Clayton Tune. But Dobbs only averaged 4.7 yards per pass play during his career to this point, and he just got traded to the team 2 weeks ago. So I'm not really expecting much out of him in week 1 specifically.
Let's move over to our next one. This is Love versus Fields. And I think the public will be clinching onto their Justin Fields MVP tickets all game long. But I also don't think anyone is giving Love the respect that he could possibly be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that was crazy to see that Justin Fields has more MVP tickets than anyone else in the league. To his credit, he has more rushing expected points added in his first 2 seasons in the league than any quarterback in our database, including Lamar Jackson and Cam Newton. However, he's finished last or close to last in yards per pass play in both seasons with a career 3.6% interception rate. So I don't know. I'm a little skeptical about Fields going into this season, at least compared to market expectations and definitely compared to Public Brain expectations. And Jordan Love, I can also see going either way. I mean, Jordan Love has only had 86 passing plays in his first 2 seasons in the league, but he did average 6.8 yards per pass play, which is nice. But he also had a 3.6% interception rate, which is not good. I mean, he's right there with Fields in terms of throwing the ball to the other team. So I think it's fair to say that Green Bay's offense has one of the widest ranges of outcomes in the league. But if Love is good, he's going to show it on Sunday in this matchup because the Bears secondary had some major question marks. They're planning to start second-round rookie Tyreek Stevenson, along with rolling out Kyler Gordon at nickelback again, and Gordon surrendered nearly 2 yards per slot cover snap in 2022, ranking 65th out of 68 qualifiers.
Yeah, I don't think the Bears made enough moves on this defense to really be good this year.
Yeah, and specifically the pass rush, they had a league low 24% pressure rate in 2022. They bring in Yannick Ngakoue on a 1-year, $10 million deal. I was shocked to see it that high. I think it's just a classic case of teams paying for sacks and not pressures. Of the 104 players with 300 pass rushing snaps last season, Ngakoue had the 4th lowest pressure to sack ratio. So I think Yannick Ngakoue is overrated as a pass rusher, and he's not really going to make a major difference getting the Bears out of the cellar in terms of pass rushes in the NFL. So you got a bad pass rush, question marks in the secondary. If Love is good, this is the time to show it.
All right, let's move on to the next segment. We're going to be talking about some weather of the week here.
Yeah, we're seeing high humidity and chances of rain all over the country this weekend. This could affect scoring in Baltimore, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Washington, Foxborough, New York, and even the usually dry Denver.
Yeah, and what effect does rain have on things like totals in these games?
Well, scoring environments are usually 4 points lower, according to our metric, if rain stays consistent throughout the game. And this effect is particularly noticeable on natural grass field, where it just slows down so much in the mud. And Baltimore, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Washington, and Denver all have natural grass. So we could see mud in all of those venues on Sunday.
Yeah, I remember you had to throw out the week 1 game with Chicago and San Francisco last year because
that was a monsoon.
Yeah, I don't even know if I'd call that a rain game. You're right. But you mentioned humidity, but why would that really affect a football game?
So humidity is a lesser known effect on scoring, but it does make a difference. The high humidity games are lower scoring. The extra sweat on the ball makes it harder for quarterbacks to grip, and it also requires more ball security from runners, which results in less freedom to be elusive. And Aaron Rodgers even touched on this subject in Hard Knocks when he was mic'd up during the preseason on the sideline. He was asking the refs if they could carry a towel to wipe the ball off of each snap because it was so humid out there on the field. So if you have a weekend where it's looking really muggy, and we've got, thunderstorms and rain all across the East Coast area, as well as Denver. You got to monitor this, particularly as we get close to kickoff on Sunday.
That's interesting. I'd never really thought about humidity affecting that, but it makes good sense there. But let's move over to our DraftKings player of the slate. Is there anyone that you're going to be starting in your DraftKings lineup this weekend?
Well, to me, that's got to be Courtland Sutton. He's listed at 5,200, way too low for Courtland Sutton after Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick got hurt in the preseason. I mean, he's priced around rookie wide receiver Jordan Addison, who's still behind KJ Osborne on the depth chart, and he's right next to Hollywood Brown as well, who has Josh Dobbs throwing him the ball all game with a game total of just 38. So Sutton is way better than those guys in terms of what we can expect from his production this weekend. He'll be the only active Broncos wide receiver with more than 50 career receiving yards. And the production has to come from somewhere because we see Denver's team total is coming in at about 24 points this weekend. And the other thing to mention here is that altitude typically affects opponents when they come into Denver early in the season. Tired legs on the defense. I mean, we've seen the Broncos are 52, 12, and 2 in home games during the first 2 weeks of the season since the merger, as teams play themselves into shape.
Yeah, I think whenever you go up into the mountains and have to do any conditioning, it hurts you. It hurts you bad. So I understand the players struggling with that. But let's move over to our primetime preview. We have a divisional matchup between the Cowboys and Giants. The Cowboys have hinted at scoring less, and I'm not sure if Daniel Jones is good enough to put up big numbers. What are your thoughts on this game?
Well, we released under 46.5 as a strong opinion on Thursday morning. It's down to 45 at circa at the time of this recording. And the Giants, to me, just profile as an under team to start the season. I mean, Daniel Jones raised his success rate from 45% in 2021 to 50% last year with the new coaching led by Brian Daboll. But I think it was pretty smoke and mirrors. I mean, Jones had the lowest average depth of target of any qualifying quarterback, and he used the second highest play action rate. So opposing opposing defensive coordinators have had all offseason now to scheme up ways to keep Daniel Jones in the pocket and take away those underneath routes. And he's going to have to prove he has real arm talent in 2023, which I'm skeptical of.
Should we expect to see the old Waller out there? And what else should we kind of expect to see from the Giants receivers?
Well, it never really clicked for Darren Waller in Josh McDaniels' system, but he did average 2.18 yards per route run from 2019 to 2021. And now with the Giants, I think Waller is still clearly a top 10 tight end in my eyes. He's at least a half point better than Daniel Bellinger. So it's clearly an upgrade for the offense. I've got New York's receiver group up to around league average, with Waller the focal point alongside wide receivers Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins, and Sterling Shepard returning from the ACL injury that kept him out most of last season.
Yeah, I think the Giants receivers are in for a good battle against Diggs and Gilmore this year.
Yeah, Diggs had 10 pass breakups in 2022, which ranks 7th among cornerbacks. And they brought in Stephon Gilmore, who ranked 6th in PFF coverage grade last year. The other good news for Dallas is that Jordan Lewis, their starting nickelback, will be on the field. Dallas was conceding just a 43% dropback success rate the first 7 weeks of the season last year, which ranked 7th in the NFL when everyone was intact, including Lewis. But then backup nickelback Terron Bland came in and surrendered 0.55 yards per cover snap in the slot, more than Lewis. So now on the field, they will have Diggs, Lewis, and then Gilmore to play the other boundary cornerback. This Dallas secondary is definitely going to be a major threat. The other thing to consider is Gilmore, throughout times in his career in New England and in Carolina, he would go one-on-one, sometimes taking away top tight ends. We saw him do that. He's a big enough body to take away tight ends. And considering that the Giants' top receiving threat is a tight end, maybe they, shadow Waller with Gilmore and, use Diggs and Lewis on the weaker Giants boundary receivers.
Yeah, that'll be a good matchup to watch those two go at it. But what should we expect with the matchup in the trenches this week?
Well, the Giants left tackle Andrew Thomas registered just 2 penalties all last season and conceded only 21 pressures on over 600 pass blocking snaps. Meanwhile, right tackle Evan Neal ranked 55th in pass blocking efficiency out of 56 qualifiers. So Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence combined for 8.5 pressures per game on the edge for the Cowboys in 2022. And certainly one of them is going to wreak havoc on every drop back across from Neal, while the other might be somewhat contained by Andrew Thomas.
Yeah, and did this Giants line get any better?
Well, New York's center last year, John Feliciano, ranked 6th worst in pass blocking efficiency, but other rookie centers last season, like Tyler Linderbaum and Luke Fortner, were worse than him. So I'm not sure the Giants can say they upgraded at center, even though it was so bad last year after drafting John Michael Schmitz in the 2nd round. And meanwhile, we know Mark Lewinsky and Ben Bredesen are clearly below average guards. So, I don't know that the Giants can say they upgraded on the offensive line, because Andrew Thomas was already great and they would just need Evan Neal to make a leap. But reports out of training camp are that they considered benching Neal for week 1. He's been so bad.
Oh, geez, that is not good to hear for Giants fans. But what about their defense? Did they get better this offseason?
I do think New York's defense got better. They rated 30th in rush EPA allowed in 2022, and now they've brought in Bobby Okereke, who had 31 run stops, ranking 13th among linebackers last year. So I do think he's going to help them improve their rush defense.
Yeah, and I love the trade for Isaiah Simmons. Do you think he could still pan out here?
They traded for Simmons, who never really fit into Vance Joseph's fire zone schemes in Arizona to start his career. The first 3 seasons have certainly been a big disappointment compared to the draft capital the Cardinals used on him. But Giants defensive coordinator Wink Martindale has one of the best man blitzing schemes in the NFL. And Simmons is a great blitzer. He had a 14% pressure rate last season, but rushed the passer on only 7% of his snaps, which will go way up in this new scheme. And per PFF, Simmons was the only player in college football with 80-plus grades as a run defender, tackler, pass rusher, and man coverage safety / linebacker during his last season at Clemson. So if it's going to ever click for Simmons, it's going to be with Wink Martindale. And I love the idea of all the different ways they can use him on their 3rd down packages. So I'm excited about what he can do with this Giants defense.
Yeah, what is this Martindale scheme going to look like for the Giants?
Well, I mean, they led the NFL with a 40% blitz rate last year, and no other defense was even above 35%. So it's it's a lot of cover zero, cover one. And in fact, Martindale was the only coordinator to play cover zero on more than 10% of early down snaps and 20% of late down snaps in the preseason. And Dak Prescott is solid diagnosing coverage at the line of scrimmage, and he might be able to exploit the Giants once or twice when they send a house. That is one of the main reasons I didn't make this under a best bet, because I like the Giants as an under team here. But Prescott, I'm a little bit worried that he's not necessarily the quarterback to go after, and we know Martindale is going to go after it.
Yeah, and he's got the receivers to make those big plays for him. But the Giants' D-line should be pretty decent, right?
Yeah, I mean, on the interior, Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams combined for 96 pressures, and they should get a leap from last year's 5th overall pick edge defender, Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah, and I mean, this is just a tough matchup against the Cowboys because their O-line, pretty star-studded.
Yeah, I mean, the Cowboys' offensive line is elite at 2 spots, left tackle and right guard, and above average at the other 3. However, left guard Tyler Smith is banged up. It looks like he's going to play, but he's banged up, and he could struggle if he's not at 100% against second-team All-Pro defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah, so looking at this game, what's your analysis on Cowboys versus Giants?
So, I mean, our model favors the Cowboys by 3.8 with a predicted total of 43.0 after accounting for the current weather and the fact that the Cowboys probably won't have safety Donovan Wilson. So 43.0, that's usually enough for us to make a best bet, especially when the market was at 46.5. Now it's down to 45. So there's not a ton of value there anymore. But we didn't make it a best bet because little bit of a matchup edge for the Cowboys offense with Dak being able to diagnose Wink's blitzing schemes, probably better than most quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, well, I think we are in for a fun divisional matchup in this game, and the rest of the slate has some awesome games. We're pumped for week 1. Make sure to go check out the free analysis on DrBobSports.com. They've got all the college football stuff, and all the NFL games are getting put up there. So we will be back next Friday with our week 2 previews of NFL. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe.